This is Smiling Sam Alvey, and you're listening to the MMA Think Tank.
You are listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
All right, Mike, we are back live. Okay, we're not live, but we're back finally. Took a little bit of a hiatus, probably, about an extra 4 or 5 days or so. I don't know what it was exactly, but you know, a lot's been going on with me in my personal life and stuff lately with my job and everything. So it's been kind of hectic. But anyway, we're going to toss all that aside for now because here we are to talk about mixed martial arts, Mike, a sport in which you and I love.
Well, Jay, don't get too quick on that. I just want to say to the audience, I support your change. I support the bathrooms they're putting in for you. And
no. Oh, and my voice even cracked there, so it kind of sounded like I was going through that change. So, yeah, you got me choked up there. Yeah. No, but how have you been, Mike?
I've been pretty good. I had a couple of weeks of vacation. I think I actually talked about that last time, maybe the first week. My second week was great. Just hung out, watched more fights, and did my own thing for a week while the wife was working. And now we're back to the grind, back to work, back to fights, back to everything.
And make no mistake, you're still putting out some great articles on the Facebook site. So Mike's still there doing his thing. He's been doing it, the past 3 weeks. So that has not changed. So anytime we might go on a little hiatus, you can always go to the website, Facebook, find us at MMA Think Tank, and you will find all kinds of articles written there, up-to-date news and information there by Michael Harmon himself.
Yeah, and it's just everything that's coming out, and we of course discuss it on the show. So if you guys have something from Facebook you like, we're going to discuss it most likely, and send questions in to us either through Facebook or through our phone number or tweet us. Yeah,
925-237-1296 is the number, and anytime you guys call, leave a message, we'll put you on the air.
Fight Rewind.
Let's go ahead and get into this Fight Night 98 that we watched yesterday, Mike. I thought overall, good card, decent card, solid performances by several of the fighters, and we're going to get into that. But first off, of course, we'll start off with Tony Ferguson versus Dos Anjos. Now, Mike, first off, I want to say that we've been calling it for about a year and a half or so now, saying that Ferguson should be getting the next shot soon. And basically, he put on a performance that you and I both feel that would have happened a year ago against Dos Anjos.
Yeah, I agree. And if you guys watched the fight, I think Brian Stam put it pretty succinctly and perfectly, which is, a couple of months ago, more like 6 months ago, but a couple of months ago, this would have been the title fight. This would have been a title fight for sure. But, of course, Dos Anjos got beat by Alvarez. So this was almost a title fight. So, we've both been big fans of Ferguson since the Tough Show. I believe it was Tough 13. And he brought it in, put it on Dos Anjos. Now, Dos Anjos had a good night as well, landing some good shots. But I think at the end of the fight, Ferguson just didn't look tired at all. He didn't look hurt. And Dos Anjos was bloody in the face and looked kind of exhausted.
Yeah. And I have to put it out there that I feel that this performance by Ferguson was more, I think it was more impressive than Eddie Alvarez against Dos Anjos because we had nothing but constant pressure being put on a guy like Dos Anjos for 5 rounds. And it was just constant and it was in your face. Ferguson did everything right every round. And I think it was just more impressive of a fight.
I don't know if I'll say it's more impressive, but I do understand where you're coming from. I think it's impressive for sure. And to add on to kind of what you said with the pressure and stuff, it wasn't just pressure, It was also I assume you're going to agree with what I'm saying here anyway, but because you didn't say it, but that was the strikes, right, Jay? It was the strikes, all the different types of strikes, the ins and out movements, all that stuff like that. Is that pretty good piggyback on what you're going to say?
Oh yeah, definitely 100%. He did his thing like we knew he would, and you're 100% correct when you say that. This would have been the outcome of the championship fight if it would have happened 6 months ago. I just thought it was a more dominant looking fight because it lasted 5 rounds. Because anything can happen. You throw a lucky punch, and I'm not saying by any means that Eddie Alvarez threw a lucky punch, but let's just say, anything can happen in that situation. You hit somebody hard and you just jump on them like Alvarez does. You have the potential to beat somebody really quick and make it a quick night for yourself. But anything could happen there. And in this performance, we had one dominant performance over the other every round. And it was a great fight. Probably my candidate for fight of the year, to be honest.
Well, I'm glad you brought up, basically the rounds and things like that, because for me, it wasn't as close as the 48-47 scorecard. Let me just give you a quick not recap of each round, but just recap of how I scored it. Round 1 for me was a toss-up. Round 2 I gave to Ferguson. Round 3 was close, but I gave it to Ferguson. And rounds 4 and 5 I gave it to Ferguson. The scorecards, all 3 judges gave Dos Anjos 1 and 3, and those were the ones. Round 1 was a toss-up, and round 3 was close. So the other 3 rounds went the ways the scorecards went. But that 48-47 scorecard, Jay, I thought that was kind of disingenuous the way it looks. It makes it sound like it was closer than it was. And I'm not trying to say that that Dos Anjos was blown out of the waters, even though, he did have his face bloody up and stuff like that. He landed some really good shots, and Ferguson's got a tremendous chin to take some of those shots. But it really was, worse than or I should say, more of a blowout than 48-47, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I thought the same thing. When that call, the score was read out, I thought to myself, I was shaking my head going, no, I didn't give him those 2 rounds. It wasn't a 48-47 match here. Honestly, I think that I would say that he won 4 out of the 5 rounds. Easy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had. Just the toss up in round 1, and round 3 was close, but I gave to Ferguson. So we're certainly in agreement there.
Oh yeah, I mean, by that time, I think in the 3rd round, Dos Anjos' face started to get really bloodied, really bad, and Ferguson looked pretty good at the end of the fight, to be honest.
Yeah, and to be fair, RDA, he did say that, he saw double after the eye poke, I believe, which was in round 2. But they did say, look, Ferguson was still a better fighter. So, I'm not sure where they're going to go from here. Jay, I don't know, who's next. I assume he's going to fight for the title. Hope he does. I know there's Nurmagomedov who is going to be fighting Michael Johnson. But I think right now, with 9 in a row and having just beaten, the former champ, and he's been active for so long, Ferguson, compared to Nurmagomedov, you got to give Ferguson the shot. And then if Nurmagomedov beats Johnson, have him come up next.
100% agree with you on all those points. Ferguson has been in the waiting to go up against, the title holder. Here we have him beating the ex-title holder. There is no doubt in my mind. 9 wins in a row against solid opponents and one guy who just held the title. It's got to be him. And if it's not, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense if they pick anybody else. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it seemed to me that he didn't want to hear anything about that stuff because he, quickly after the fight was over in the post-fight, he just said his piece and then kind of walked off. And I don't know if that was kind of a physical or mental move to just leave it out there that, hey, I'm the best. I'm not going to talk about these other things. So even though I would have liked to have, heard him, more on the mic, I think part of that of him walking away early was just a statement of, I'm the best right now to fight for it. Let's not even get into these other things.
Yeah. Oh, he's correct. And if there is anybody else chosen to fight for the belt next, then I will be the first to say here that there is some kind of beef between the UFC and Ferguson if he doesn't get the next shot.
Right.
There's got to be
Right.
something there.
Yeah, and before we move on, Jay, unless you have anything else, of course.
Oh, yeah.
How do you think? How do you think he does against either, Conor McGregor or Eddie Alvarez? I think he does great against either guys. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Haven't thought too much about if he beats them or not, but I know he can get with them, and it'd be a great fight either way.
Okay. I think he beats them both. I think
Really?
he beats them both. And like I said earlier, anything can happen in these fights, but I think that Ferguson has all the tools and, more importantly, the chin that will hold up against either man. I think he will win the fight.
And the swagger too. A lot of times we'll talk about. I say we, I mean just people in general. Sometimes swagger is a bad thing. It can lead you into destruction. But sometimes when it's used right, it can lead you on to victory because of confidence. And that's what Ferguson had in that fight, man. He was kind of pointing and he was kind of moving around and just he looked fluid out there. Looked like he was having fun.
Yeah.
And he was getting tagged by RDA. Let's not forget out there, guys. RDA, he destroyed his murderer's row that he went through to get the title and defend it once. I mean, Anthony Pettis, Ben Henderson, Cowboy Cerrone. I mean, like these guys. Maybe I'm missing somebody, but I mean, to go through those guys and either finish them or dominate them, and then have what Ferguson has done is just downright amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I want to leave it on a good note for RDA as well. RDA looked great. He didn't look bad, even though I think that this was a one-sided dominant win for Ferguson. I still say RDA looked good, and it's because it's RDA. I mean, he's still got it. Now, here's the thing. Next, I think for RDA, I think they should either put him up against Johnson or Nurmagomedov. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, and that's kind of how they would usually probably put it with winners versus winners and losers versus losers. I would love to see him fight Johnson. I think Johnson's quick. He really showed me something in his last fight against Poirier. Not that he didn't have that before against Poirier, but just kind of maybe he just reminded us, or at least he reminded me that he had that in his arsenal, the movement, the quick strikes, things like that. Nurmagomedov, he lost to Nurmagomedov already. He was thrown around, ragdolled, but that was like 3 years ago or something like that. So that was a different RDA. And the fly in the ointment for RDA right now is he left King's MMA. This was his first fight without Master Rafael Cordero. So he might have a couple of fights where he's trying to find himself. Maybe not find himself, but get comfortable with his coaches. This is the first time outside now, into the octagon with these new coaches. And I don't think that it had a big doing on the fight here. But you do need to get used to the coaches once you get into into the line of fire.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could see that happening with him. But as far as him fighting Nurmagomedov again, I think the same thing will happen again. I think he'll get ragdolled. But when it comes to Johnson, I think he beats Johnson and rather easily. I think
it's certainly possible.
I think he's a much bigger, stronger guy than Johnson, and I don't think Johnson's ready for that, to be honest.
I think the only way that Johnson wins that fight is a unanimous decision, sticking and moving.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But yeah, Marcin Held versus Diego Sanchez in the co-main event. That was a 29-28, 29-28, 29-27 for Sanchez. I enjoyed that fight because it reminded me as a Diego Sanchez fan. And by the way, I like Marcin Held. I like a lot of the grapplers. I like that fight because it reminded me who Diego Sanchez was when he was great, when he was able to take guys down, keep top position, and if he didn't pound you out, he kept busy. And even though the first round was kind of close with all stand up, and by the way, if you guys haven't seen this fight, when he got in that standing guillotine and basically jumped up, pushed off the cage to get out of the standing guillotine, that is Diego did, was fantastic. After that, though, Sanchez in rounds 2 and 3 just he just took Held down and was on top and moving around for rounds 2 and 3, solid ground and pound, and evaded Held's submission attempts.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked at the way Diego looked last night, to be honest. Because here we have an aging, Diego Sanchez. He's been around for a while, and you got Marcin Held's, debut in the octagon. Yeah, I was just really shocked that Marcin Held didn't win this fight. You have Diego Sanchez, who's aging now, and he's on his way out, really. I mean, he's got how many more fights in him? I don't see too many more, Mike. But Marcin Held, I had him to win this fight, so I was shocked.
Yeah, I did as well. I really didn't want him to fight someone like Diego Sanchez because I'm a Diego Sanchez fan. I like these guys. I like Held. I didn't want to have to choose between these two guys. But I've been with Diego longer. He's a great fighter. He's on his way out, like you said. What I liked about this fight too is that it really showed. I talked about earlier about how it showed Diego like how he was when he first, was in his prime, I guess. But also showed that when you're a wrestler and you use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can become such a powerhouse in this sport. And he showed that over Held, who is one of the best, ground fighters, one of the best, grapplers in the game. And he was able to get the decision. Jay, the question I have is, do you think basically Held should have maybe tried to get up a little more often instead of trying to lay on his back and grab the knee bars and the leg locks and things like that?
Yeah, I thought a little bit of that, but also at the same time, I don't think he knew exactly where Diego was at in his jiu-jitsu game. And he found out really quickly that he knows quite a bit. And for him to get out of the, that guillotine, the way he pushed off the cage, like you said, it was beautiful. And, even on the ground, when he would try for a leg lock, Diego was having none of it. And I think he was surprised at what Diego knew.
Yeah, and I think I probably would. I understand why Held stayed on the ground because, that's his bread and butter. So if you can't get it done in with what's your best is, especially on, when you're grappling, sure, it's mixed martial arts. You have different ways of winning. But, usually when, you're grappling, you're not getting hurt too bad by punches and elbows or something like that. Unless, it's someone like Uriah Faber, Tito Ortiz or, one of those guys. So big ups for Diego, man. He said he's going to try and go for a run. You got to say that. I understand that. He is close to being out. Quite a feather in his cap, though, to get Marcin Held. Sadly, I think a lot of people aren't going to know Marcin Held. But I really am interested more now to see where Marcin Held goes from here than Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, me too, of course, because you have Marcin Held basically just starting out his career here, with the UFC.
Yeah.
And Diego's on his way out. So, yeah, I want to see where he's going with this. Maybe he'll come back, better game plan for the next opponent. But basically what it comes down to is he underestimated Diego Sanchez and got beat.
Yep.
All right, Mike. Next up, we'll talk about a fight I really want to get into here. This is the fight, Mike, that I want to get into.
Gotcha.
Charles Oliveira versus Ricardo Lamas. Now, I know that Ricardo Lamas has been somewhat, I don't want to say a punching bag, but sort of the butt of our jokes when it comes to top 5 fighters or top 10 fighters in this division. But I have to recant on something. I have to do an about face with Ricardo Lamas. I think Ricardo Lamas is deservingly in the spot he's in now, and I think that Ricardo Lamas is better than I thought he was.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I kind of keep him, kind of in the same area, only a little better. I mean, maybe I won't go as far as where you have him, but I don't think where you have him is certainly a bad place at all. For me, Charles Oliveira, he was again not a top 5 guy, but a top 10 guy. And Lamas usually beats those guys. Where I really think Lamas shined is that I don't think Oliveira tried to get that weight off as best as he could have. To come in 10 pounds over is just ridiculous. Yeah. And if you don't have an injury or something like that because of it, they were talking about how his coaches were saying, "Oh, it was the problem because once we got to Mexico, we underestimated, how hard it was going to be to get the weight off because of the altitude and blah 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 blah." Okay, like that's just ridiculous. You can't get down to a day before the fight and be at 10 pounds. You just can't. And for Ricardo, what I will say for Ricardo Lamas is, and I agree with you, of course, everybody listening knows, how we feel about Ricardo Lamas, is that he beat a guy that came in basically at lightweight, basically a weight class above him, a submission artist that is fantastic, who I think is a fantastic fighter overall in general anyway, and beat him at his own game. Yeah. And that was just amazing. Let's not forget though, It almost didn't happen though, because Oliveira he had him in a rear naked choke, I think, and he was saved at the end of round 1 by the bell. It looked like, but you know what? That's how it goes. This is the game we play, and he got the choke in the second round.
Yeah, I think that the end of that round when he was when he got under the neck, Oliveira did. I think that Lamas knew exactly where the time limit was. He knew that there was less than 10 seconds to go. I don't think he really cared at that moment. He dominated Oliveira on the ground after that. It was it was amazing to watch, and I'm not holding him up on a high pedestal, so don't get it twisted here, but I will say that I hold more respect for Lamas now than I did before this fight. So, Ricardo, do your thing. I liked what I saw in you last night. If I keep seeing this from him against top 5 opponents, I'm going to be really impressed. And, hey, he's going to keep going up a notch. So his stock is definitely moving up in my book.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. It's when you look at his fighting style, when you look at that, he's only lost to the really best guys in the UFC. That is, Holloway, Mendez, Aldo. He's already fought for the title. Yeah. He's a great fighter, and he moves on and beats, like you said, a top 5 guy. We've got the new Ricardo Lamas, and I'm happy to see that.
Yeah. Well, we want to see the best in everybody in this sport.
Yeah.
So that's just the way it is. Where does you want to say anything else? Where do you think he goes from here, Lamas?
I guess I would just give him a top 5 guy. I realized that, he fought a guy that was not top 5, is more top 10. And I realized that, he fought a guy that, didn't show up in the traditional sense. I'll just say that. Yeah. But, the guys in the top 5, they're all fighting right now, Jose Aldo, he's the interim champ right now. Frankie Edgar is fighting. Max Holloway is fighting.
Yeah, they all got fights.
So I guess you got to give him maybe somebody else. Let's see. Pettis has got a fight. Swanson has a fight, I think. Stevens is fighting Edgar. So Jay, I think you just wait and see how the landscape settles.
Who was Lamas supposed to fight?
He was supposed to fight BJ Penn. Remember?
Exactly.
The Manila card.
And with BJ Penn, I just want to say this. I think the Lamas we saw last night would have wiped the floor with BJ Penn.
Yeah, I think he would have beat BJ Penn. The reason I'm not commenting too much about it, or as specific as you are, is because I just don't know what BJ Penn's going to look like coming out of Jackson's. And but you know what? With all these cancellations of fights and all this, it keeps getting pushed back. I just don't know if it's going to make a difference. All these
cancellations and all these, these weight cuts that aren't being met. I mean, that's another thing with Oliveira. I know you touched on it a bit. I just want to say real quick that there is no excuse for a fighter. This is your job. This is what you do for a living. You need to make the weight. If you can't, stay up a weight class. Go up a weight class.
Yep.
Because it's just ridiculous now. There was 10 pounds is a lot. And you're looking at a guy who was trying to lose the weight. So you got to add at least another 10, 15 pounds on fight day.
Right.
So kudos to Lamas for beating a guy who was that heavy in that octagon. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about that. Let's go ahead and move on, Mike, because I do want to talk about another fight here with Alexa Grasso making her debut with the UFC. And if you guys don't know who Alexa Grasso is, she's been fighting for Invicta for quite some time now, 23 years old. She's an amazing fighter, 115 pound. I think she's a great prospect at this weight class, and she put it on Heather Joe Clark yesterday. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know you followed her a little more than I have. I just kind of got to know her a little bit after meeting her at the fan convention. She was a sweetheart, and she was very gracious. And I checked her out, of course, on Fight Pass after I found out that when I texted you the picture, you're like, oh, I like her, she's great, or whatever you said. I mean, and so she's fantastic looking. Look, Heather Joe Clark's not a world beetle. She's not a world beetle at all. She's not a world beater either, to be quite specific. But you know what? She's in the UFC. She's got wins in the UFC.
Yep.
She's a UFC veteran. And to have Grasso come in there and dominate her the way she did in all facets of the game was just impressive. And I'm excited to see this young lady, what she does in this division. You know, is she going to become kind of like the new, Paige Van Zant, the very beautiful, feminine body looking fighter that's not all muscular? You know what I'm saying, guys? Is she going to do that? I don't know, but she's fantastic right now, and I want to see her grow.
Yeah. I think that she's one of those fighters that is definitely going to keep growing in the sport. I think that can only get better. She's 23, and what we saw out of her in that first round was just awesome. The way she came at Heather Jo, it was a beating. It was brutal in that first round. Heather Jo, strong competitor. She's game all the time. She's got a chin on her, Mike, and she was able to take a lot. And I'm just impressed with this young lady, Grasso. So I can't wait to see her fight again.
Yeah, glad to see she's in the UFC, and let's move her on up the chain. Last fight, I guess we got that we talked about, of course, Sam Alvey. He was fighting Alex Nicholson. That was the Fight Pass prelim. Featured prelim, I should say. Bill J and I love Sam Alvey. Obviously, he's been on the show a couple times. Alvey outlanded Nicholson to win a 29-28 across the board decision, despite 2 groin shots, I might add. Kind of a close first round, but then Alvey pulled away. Jay, he didn't get the knockout this time, but he got the win. There's talk of, does he fight, a top 15 guy now? Where does he go? I just want to say that Nicholson is one of those guys that's got heavyweight power and a lot of knockouts, and he's a younger guy. I think he's now 7-3, so he's just now at 10 fights. So he was a really good prospect, and Alvey, he got the decision quite easily with those last 2 rounds. So I'm happy for Sam, and I say, yeah, give him somebody in top 15. If he gets a win, go to top 10.
Now, I think it was the end of the second or might have been start of the third where he looked to hurt Nicholson pretty good. And I thought it was going to be a knockout, surely, when he put it on Nicholson and started hitting him with those lefts. It didn't happen, but Alvey, his hands always look impressive. So it's going to be, I would say give Alvey a better opponent here, see what he could do against a top 15 guy. See where he's at,
I think what's funny is that he's already been interviewed after the fight, not in the octagon because they didn't give him an interview, which I was kind of saddened about. But post fight, when all the MMA journalists are there, Ariel and everybody like that, MMA Junkie. He got an interview with MMA Junkie, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I want to fight again before the year's out," because he's already got 4 fights. And if you remember when we talked to him, Jay, he wanted to fight again, and sure enough, now there's only we just started November, and he wants to get a fight hopefully in December, and I just love the guy for that.
Yeah, you got to love a guy who does that, just like Cowboy, he's right. The same type of fighter. He always wants to fight. I guess Alvey's got to pay some bills, just like the rest of us.
He's got a big family, doesn't he?
That's right, he does. So, yeah, and what was interesting, too, while I was watching the fight, I was hearing his wife in the corner yelling stuff at him.
Right.
And I love that. And I know we talked to him and we told him the same thing. We love that dynamic that they have going on there, his relationship with her in the corner and her supporting him. But to hear her yelling stuff like, hit him, get him now, and, just stuff at Alvey. It's awesome. It's awesome.
It's a family affair, man. I wish we had more of that.
Yeah, life goals for sure there.
Well, moving on to the day before that, we had Bellator 163, Liam McGeary versus Phil Davis for the light heavyweight championship. Jay, I'm pretty sure I picked Phil Davis. Did you pick Phil Davis as well? Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah,
we were right. And we were quite right easily. After the first half of the first round, which is kind of tough for Phil. Phil, he was trying to get the range, couldn't get in there. Then he landed a punch and hurt McGeary enough to get the takedown and get that round. And then after that, rounds 2 through 5 were he just dominated the rest of that fight. I mean, he looked great in that fight. And it was 50-44, 50-45, 50-43. That tells you how dominant it was. I got one thing left to say before we kind of go back and forth, Jay, and I wonder if you thought the same thing because I didn't text you this. I haven't seen a wrestler dominate a guy like that in Bellator, looking that good since Ben Askren.
Yeah, 100% right, man. I didn't even think about that, but you're correct. Especially with a guy like McGeary, who let's face it, he's a big, scary looking dude, and he's strong, and he's got the tools to just knock you out. So he had to wrestle this guy. If he tried to stand with him, he would have lost. I'm confident in that. But his wrestling, he went to it like he should, and he won this fight dominantly. I wish other wrestlers in whatever organization they're in would go back to their wrestling roots in situations like this. Too often we see guys like Robbie Lawler, who doesn't go to his wrestling. We see guys like Josh Koscheck before when he was in his prime, he got into boxing and wanted to box. You got to go back to your roots, man. If wrestling is your base and you're fighting a guy who's a great striker like McGeary is, Davis did the right thing.
Yeah, and Liam McGeary's he's a Renzo Gracie black belt. He's completely legit on the ground as well, but you don't want to stand with him for sure. That's like you said, that's the first thing you don't do is stand with Liam McGeary. His length, his strength, but he's also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and that's what but from Renzo Gracie, which was even what Phil Davis did even more amazing. Yeah. And what I loved about this fight, Jay, was seeing Phil Davis, how intelligent he was. I learned something. You think you learn it all. You think you know it all after watching some of this sport, or you learn as the sport changes. Yeah. But something I learned was the whole thing where how he left his knee on his belly, so that McGeary couldn't either post out, or I forget what it exactly was. But you're thinking to yourself, why is he not getting in mount right now? Well, he'd get to mount, and then he would get out of mount and leave his knee up there. So, there's always little things that Davis did that taught me something that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we've seen that thing before. We've seen other guys leave their knee on their stomachs before. They may not have talked about it and said why they did it in that way, but we've seen it before. But all too often, you see guys just go straight to the mount.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, he fought very smart. And kudos to Davis. I'm glad that he is the champ there now because he deserved it. And we knew that him going in that organization, we knew that he was going to become the champ. You and I called it.
Right. And, he's the first, unless I'm missing something, he's the first UFC vet to get the Bellator championship. Benson Henderson had the first chance. He lost against Koreshkov. Tito Ortiz, I think actually might have had a chance before him. Against McGeary, obviously. So, but Davis came in, and man, he's 4-0 now. Yeah, believe in Bellator, and looking good. Submission and a knockout in the tournament against I believe it was Carmont, and if it wasn't Carmont, it was Vassell. I think it was Carmont and former champ Emmanuel Newton.
And he ended
Carmont, up beating King Mo as well, and now he just destroyed McGeary.
Yeah, Davis deserves to be the champion there. So, congrats to Phil Davis.
Yep, and then Brennan Ward versus Saad Awad, your co-main event. It was all stand up. When Ward had Awad against the fence, I thought it was great, man. When he actually asked Brennan Ward if he wanted to wrestle or bang, and so Brennan Ward let him go. And then soon after that, he let loose a striking barrage. They had Awad falling face first, man. It was good stuff.
Yeah, Mike, it's good to see Brennan Ward back in the win column, and doing his thing and getting that W against a guy who's, a dangerous opponent. So kudos to him. I'm glad he won. And we got anything else on that card, Mike?
No, we're pretty good on that. Let's just the last card to talk about Bellator 162, Alexander Shlemenko versus Kendall Grove. There was that fight, Bobby Lashley versus Josh Appelt, and Ryan Couture versus Goiti Yamauchi. The headliner, Shlemenko versus Grove. Shlemenko gets a TKO in round 2 in his Bellator return. First round had some good back and forth stand up, but in round 2, Shlemenko landed a left to the liver and a right to the head, pretty brutal. After Grove fell, Shlemenko then unloaded a barrage of punches for the stoppage. It was a pretty amazing thing to see, the stoppage at least. Shlemenko has three wins in a row now. So the guy's back For how long, I don't know. Let's see if he still is off of the juice. We'll see what happens with the post-fight tests, and that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, those haven't come in yet, have they?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything on any of the online sites, but they don't do it all the time unless somebody pops sometimes.
Yeah, and it usually takes a while. I think like a couple of weeks or so, which is odd to me. Like, it shouldn't take that long, because you and I can get a drug test for a job and they get the results that day. So
yeah,
I don't understand why it takes so long for these guys. But it is what it is. You're like you said, he's back in the win call, 3 wins in a row actually. So he is back, and let's see how long he can last.
Yeah, because he's a smaller middleweight. He can fight at welterweight if he chose to. But we'll certainly see. Something I'm kind of getting more excited about, just from a name standpoint, and just making, with all things being equal, I guess. Bobby Lashley getting the rear naked choke in round 2 over Josh Appel. Josh Appel's not a world beater by any means. He's not going to be the best fighter in 10 years or 5 years. Lashley should have won this fight, and he did. But it makes him 5-0 in Bellator. And he's got all finishes with 3 submissions and 2 TKOs. If you add everything before, not everything, but the wins before Bellator, he actually has 8 in a row. And I know he hasn't beaten a ton of great guys, but this puts him now probably to fight either Czech Congo or somebody else in the vacant heavyweight title match sometime in January or February. And Lashley's a good dude. I'd like to see him fight for it. Win or not, that's fine either way. But I think Lashley's a good dude, so I'm happy for him.
If you were to ask me a year ago if Bobby Lashley, if you were to fight Czech Congo, if he could beat Czech Congo, I would have said no. But as far as Czech Congo's been looking lately, I think Bobby Lashley will beat him.
Yeah, I like how you put that. If you asked me a year ago, and I agree. And we also have, of course, Matt Mitrione in the wings as well. And I believe Mitrione has lost to Czech Congo, or it's the other way around. I know it's one or the other. So it could be Mitrione in that vacant title shot, or maybe they'll make some sort of a tournament. Like Bellator used to do back in the day. Coker's fine with tournaments whenever they suit him. And I like tournaments whenever it suits the whole thing. And I think that there's no champ currently, since they stripped the other champ. I say make a tournament, and I'm good with it.
Yeah, I definitely see Matt Mitrione having a good fight with Lashley. I think that would be a pretty good fight. They both got decent chins, and they both. I would give the edge in gas tank to Mitrione if I had to say anything about that. But because all that muscle and everything that Lashley carries is just insane.
Oh, I agree, and I just wish they'd make these fights already. But they don't have a New York card yet, so maybe they're waiting to figure some things out over the next over this last couple of cards in the year. We're going to talk about, of course, the News Corner coming up, some of those fights that are being made.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see them in New York, along with the UFC and the WSOF, who've already got theirs billed. The last fight we have here, guys. Is really because you've got 2 great fighters, and one is a very big prospect. That's Ryan Couture versus Goiti Yamauchi. Both really good grapplers, great grapplers. Yamauchi he got an armbar in 61 seconds of round 1 after Ryan Couture got an early takedown. And I felt bad for Couture, because it looked like he was going to start moving and maybe not necessarily get the win right there, but get down to business. But Yamauchi, being the great grappler he is, threw up just a fantastic submission. And he reminded us why he was a prospect to begin with. And this was his lightweight debut. So to do that in his lightweight debut against a guy who's a veteran at lightweight, I thought it was pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, yes and no, in my opinion. Like I said on the last podcast, Mike, never been a real big fan of Ryan Couture. I just never really saw anything great coming out of him in terms of this fight game. He doesn't do it for me. I don't know what it is. I've seen him fight in Strikeforce. I've seen him fight, in other organizations. He just doesn't do it.
You hate Randy Couture.
No, I don't hate Randy Couture. Randy
I
Couture
know, miss.
is a living legend. Unfortunately, his son isn't. So
Yeah, what I will give you on that, and this is all opinions, obviously, but what I will say, I will side with you on is that Ryan doesn't exude any umph.
no killer instinct. I don't see killer instinct in him.
He's just there.
He doesn't go after it. It's like he phones in his performance every time. He's just like, okay, I'm here to fight. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. And it's just, I don't know. You can almost feel that kind of attitude from him.
Yeah, I mean, when he has the opening, he's great at getting it. That's why I still think he's a good grappler, but he just doesn't seem excited to be there to get it done.
Yeah. He doesn't look like a fighter, He doesn't look like one of those guys you think is going to come in and fight. He looks like he's the guy who's managing a fighter or something. So
right.
I don't know. But
hey, man, before we move on to News Corner, unless you have anything else to add,
no.
I have a question for you though too with just Yamauchi. He came off that loss, the decision loss to Bubba Jenkins, and Bubba, he's a good prospect as well, and his wrestling kind of owned Yamauchi's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was a decision. So what do you think Yamauchi can do in this lightweight division? Of course, lightweight is really packed right now in Bellator. I think he's got a good shot at moving up the ladder. I'm not saying he's going to be champ at the end of next year, but I think he can make some moves. What do you think?
Anything is possible. And at one time he was a big prospect. He looked good against Ryan Couture, but again, it's Ryan Couture. I don't know, man. I think that this guy, anything's possible at this point.
News Corner.
All right, Mike, let's go ahead and get into some news. What do you got for us?
Well, Black Beast fans out there, Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, is fighting again. He's fighting someone I've never heard of, which is kind of sad to me, but, that's how it goes sometimes. He's fighting Shamil Abdurakhimov. Shamil Abdurakhimov, okay? And they're going to headline UFC Fight Night 102 in December 9th in New York. And basically to let you know about Shamil, he's 17-3 with 7 KO, TKOs, 4 submissions, and has won his last 2 in the UFC after losing his Octagon debut. So the guy's got some skills. He's got some finishes for sure. So Derek Lewis I don't know if he has his hands full, Jay, but he's got certainly an opponent that has finishing skills and has been there before.
To be honest, I'm just glad to see him fight again. I like watching the guy fight. He's one of the most entertaining heavyweights that we have. So, yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just going to pick Derek Lewis right now for the win, I guess. Yeah. Moving on, Mackenzie Dern won her second pro fight at Legacy 61. I know we don't talk too much usually about the regional stuff, but it's actually a reason to talk about real quick. She landed an omoplata rear naked choke combo in her second fight. That's unheard of in the sport. I realize this is regional, but it's also because she's considered the greatest female BJJ practitioner ever. She's got 19 grappling medals. She holds a black belt under her father, Wellington Megaton Diaz, and who is one of the most well sought after top Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts in the world. She's also won ADCC and no-gi as a world champion.
Have we ever seen an omoplata rear naked choke combo? I don't think I've ever seen that.
That's what I'm saying. I've never seen it, and that even though it's in Legacy here, it's in a regional promotion.
That's amazing.
I'm excited to see her. There's a lot of talk. We're going to talk about somebody else later on today about, is she the new Ronda Rousey? Obviously, Ronda Rousey's judo, not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but kind of the grappling aspect of it. Mackenzie Dern is a very beautiful young woman, and that's where the reasons why she's getting the Ronda Rousey talk. She's fantastic in the submission game, and she's a beautiful young lady. So we'll see what happens with her. She wants to go to the UFC, but not soon, maybe in a couple years.
Yeah, she's very attractive, that's for sure.
Yeah. World Series of Fighting 34 and 35 have merged to the WSOF 34 and 35 have merged to the WSOF 36 date of New Year's Eve. Now, I know that sounds kind of confusing, but I'm going to read it off to you, make it a little easier. So the new WSOF 34 card It now has Justin Gaethje defending his lightweight belt against João Zeferino, who just got his win the last fight. John Fitch defending his welterweight belt against Jake Shields. Marlon Moraes defending his bantamweight belt against Josinato Silva. And David Branch defending his middleweight belt against Lewis Taylor. And that's going to be mostly on big NBC, on the NBC network, not just NBC Sports Channel, but NBC. And so basically what they've done, if I didn't butcher it already, is they took all the fighters they had on WSOF 34 and 35 that was supposed to happen this last month and this month. They just made a giant card for December, and they're calling it WSOF 34. So those are some great fights.
Yeah.
Jay, before I let you get in here, man, let me just give the audience too a quick background on some of these fighters, because I haven't heard of Josinato Silva, who's fighting Marlon Moraes. He's 25-4, 15 KO, TKOs, 4 submissions. It'll be his WSOF debut. Lewis Taylor, you guys might remember him. He fought a couple of shows back. He's 13-3 with 7 submissions and 5 KO, TKOs, and is 2-0 in the WSOF.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Silva, because I think to fight Moraes as your debut fight in the WSOF is huge, and it's going to be quite a undertaking for him. I don't think he's going to be able to beat Moraes.
I don't think so either. I know Moraes said that he's excited to fight a guy like this because nobody knows him and he's a solid fighter. But I agree.
But I have to point out something though. If Silva does win, wow, what an accomplishment!
Oh yeah, for sure. Before we move on to the other fights real quick, I am saddened that Marlon Reyes did re-up with the WSOF. Not because I don't like the WSOF. I like all the promotions. But this is really his time to move to the UFC. And as he said in an interview, the WSOF gave him an offer he couldn't refuse. And he feels like it's family over there. The guys that run the company, they know who he is. They know his wife. They know his son. They know all about their lives. Took him out to a Brazilian steakhouse. I mean, sometimes it's all about, making things comfortable for your family and feeling welcomed, I guess, than becoming the best. I'm going to put it that bluntly. And that's as a Marlon Moraes fan. So what do you think about that, Jay, about him, re-signing with WSOF?
I'm disappointed. I wanted to see him to come to the UFC, but it is what it is. I understand. At least we'll get to see him fight. Still,
yeah,
he's on TV. It's a win-win. Still
love the guy. And anytime you have my wife saying that she actually wants to follow a fighter, anytime you see someone that has a beautiful game such as Moraes, and my wife is a fan of his. There's something special about that guy. Let's really quickly finish off the card. Gaethje versus Zeferino. Zeferino's got a great jiu-jitsu game, Jay, but I don't think that's going to affect Gaethje. I think it's just gonna get knocked out again.
Yep, 100% agree. Gaethje is on another level, man. I think Gaethje is just he is something to watch, man. That guy. Now he is the opposite of Ryan Couture. He has that killer instinct, and he puts it on you, and he doesn't let up. So I think Gaethje's going to destroy him.
He's like Superman. He's got the glasses. He doesn't seem like he's this formidable guy, just a regular dude. And then he takes off the glasses, puts on his shorts, and just wrecks fools. It's quite a sight to see. The fight of the night for you, Jay, I'm fairly sure. And I'm sure it's going to get you to be exercising. You're going to be so pumped for it. Is the John Fitch Jake Shields fight for the welterweight title. I'm going to go with John Fitch here because I got to pick somebody. I'm going to go with Fitch.
I'm going to say Shields gets it done, and he wins this 5-round fight because it's going to go all 5 rounds. It is. This is not going to be done in 1, 2, or 3, or even 4 rounds. This is going to go all 5 rounds.
Now, see, that's why I picked Fitch, but you're picking Shields because it's all 5 rounds.
Yeah, I think Shields will lay on him longer than Fitch lays on him. That's my prediction here.
I think these guys are still some of the best fighters in the world, but I still love to just make fun of him because, well, it's our show. We can do what we want, and it's fun.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, and there's some truth to what we're saying. Last but not least, the David Branch fight. He's fighting Lewis Taylor. I saw Lewis Taylor fight a couple of fights ago. He's a good dude. I just don't think he has anything for David Branch. I'm not in awe of David Branch per se, but I'm getting there the way he's beating guys at different weight classes. I realize it's a WSOF. It's not Bellator or the UFC. But the guy, he's one of those guys that needs to go, I should say, go back to the UFC because he was there for 3 fights early in his career.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Branch. He's a good fighter. I'd love to see him back in the UFC. But again, at least we get to see these guys for free on TV, provided you have the channels, Yeah,
and for sure this time, most of these fights all the fights we talked about here are going to be on NBC, with the exception, I believe, of the David Branch fight. That's going to be on NBC Sports Channel. Kind of a good fight to get you hyped up to move over to NBC. Something Jay and I are kind of sad about, but I think, Jay, I'll speak for you and go ahead and change it up if I'm wrong. Uriah Faber's retirement is coming up. We love to see him fight more, maybe, but you know what? It's probably his time. Do you think?
Yeah, of course, but it's bittersweet, as we've said in the past. He was the first guy coming back to the sport after, the UFC and everything went away for a while.
The dark period.
The dark period. He was like the first guy I gravitated to when I started watching the WEC, because the WEC was amazing to me. I don't know. Just the caliber of fighters, the way they fought, they had the tenacity, the drive, the killer instinct, all that. All those fighters brought it each and every fight. It was an amazing organization. I don't think we'll ever get that again. I don't care who you are. We're not going to see fights like that ever again, Mike. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. He
was at the forefront of all that. Yeah. And that is what I'm getting at with this guy. He provided so much highlight material for us to watch and go back and watch. Guys, if you haven't seen some of his early stuff, go back and watch it. Uriah, it was an amazing fighter. And he still is a great fighter, but he was amazing when he was in his prime. Amazing.
Yeah, the UFC, did not have those weight classes. He didn't have they didn't have 145 or 135 at the time. He held that and defended the title, I believe, 3 times. So he was the face of that weight class for so long. And to kind of piggyback off of what you talked about the WEC, and maybe I've said this before, but a lot of guys, a lot of hardcores, they say, pride never die. Well, Jay and I, we're WEC never die. I mean, that's where we come from, for sure. And Faber's going to fight Brad Pickett at UFC Fox 22 in Sacramento, fittingly for his last fight. That's going to be December 17th. I think Faber's going to take this. I think he's going to use his his grappling to get it done because Brad Pickett's he's a good grappler as well, no doubt. But he has one punch for a reason. So I'm thinking Faber's going to get it done. Maybe it'll be by decision.
I think you're right. I think Pickett is. He's a smaller guy. I think he's not as strong as Uriah, and I think Uriah may even have some speed on him, even though he's lost a step. But Pickett, again, one of those guys from the WEC, Mike.
Yep, exactly.
So it's kind of a fitting finish to his career, I think. It would have been better if he was able to be up there to fight, say, Dominic Cruz or whatnot to finish his career, but it just wasn't in the cards. But to fight another guy that was in the WEC and that is a decent opponent, it's a great way to go out.
Yeah, I think it's fitting. And me and my wife are actually going to be there. It's just right in our neighborhood. So if anything goes down, I'll be tweeting about it or Facebooking about it for sure. Good news if you're a fan of zombies. Walking Dead's been back for a couple weeks now, but you know what? It's really about the Korean zombie. Chan Sung-jung is back after his time in the military. In South Korea, you have to have time in the military. It's mandatory. Well, he's done that 3 years, and he's back. Jay, I'm excited that he's back. One of the best fighters, again, WEC, and now and has been in the UFC for a while now. Took gave Jose Aldo all he could handle before he ended up hurting his shoulder, I believe, in that title fight. So I'm glad that Chan Sung Jung, Korean Zombie's back.
Yeah, and to bounce off what you said about The Walking Dead, here we have The Walking Dead. Their Korean is now gone. He finally died.
Yes.
And here we have the Korean Zombie coming back. So, guys.
Coincidence?
Yeah, coincidence? I think not. Glennie is back and he's fighting for the UFC. No, I'm just kidding. But no, we have the Korean Zombie, and this guy, if you guys haven't had the pleasure of watching him yet, if you're new to the sport, the Korean Zombie is an awesome fighter to watch. He's just fun to watch. He constantly moves forward, walks through punches at times, and brings it. So he's got that killer instinct. I love watching him fight. I'm glad he's back. Welcome back. Can't wait. Can't wait to see him.
Still no news on who his first opponent's going to be. Hopefully that'll come out soon. Speaking of, again, more of these smaller weight divisions, let me tell you, UFC 207 is going to be pretty jam-packed. We already knew, at least from the last podcast, that it was Rousey versus Amanda Nunes. At that point, that's all there was. Well, now over the last few weeks, Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw versus John Lineker, Cain Velasquez versus Fabricio Verdum 2, Johnny Hendricks versus Neil Magny, and Matt Brown versus Tarek Saffiedine. If that's not a fantastic freaking card, I don't know what is. And 205 obviously beats that, but does it beat it by a whole letter grade? I don't know, because 207 is looking fantastic.
We're looking at an A+ and an A- card. Yeah. This is a great card. I'm excited for it. 205 is going to be spectacular, though, Mike. I cannot wait for this fight. Man, so many great fights coming up. It's amazing.
Yeah, just quick, I guess, since there's so many fights here. Let's just leave Cruz and Garbrandt for the end, because I know we're different on that one. I think Dillashaw can stay away from Lineker. I think that Velasquez. I think Verdum's going to get the win again as well. I'm going Magny over Hendricks, and Matt Brown versus Tarek Saffiedine. You know what? I think Matt Brown's winding down. I'm going to go Saffiedine.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Jay, go ahead, if you would mind, just make those picks, and then we'll talk about Cruz Garbrandt.
Saffiedine, I'm with you there. I think Matt Brown is unfortunately on his way out as well. But I hope I'm wrong. But right. I think
I'm with you.
I think Saffiedine's going to take it. As far as, Lineker versus TJ, you're right. He does have the tools to get away. He's got the speed to get away from Lineker, but I think Lineker's going to catch him. I think Lineker's going to catch him. And if he does catch him with one punch, that's all it takes from Lineker. That's all it takes. So I think he's going to get it done. I think he's going to catch him. So who else you got there that you were talking about?
It was Velasquez and Verdum too.
Velasquez, Verdum. I think we're going to see Velasquez beat Verdum this time.
In the rematch, okay. And then Hendricks and Magny.
Hendricks and Magny. I'm going to go Magny based off the way Hendricks has been looking. Okay, that's all it's based on. If you were to ask me that 2 years ago, I would have said Hendricks all day. But he's not looking very good. There's a mental issue there as well as weight cut issues. I don't know what else, but there's a problem with Hendricks. It's obvious.
I think it's that, and for me also, it's the way Neil Magny was destroyed by Lorenz Larkin in his last fight. I think Magny's got something to prove. I think he's going to get back on the horse and ride it hard over Johnny Hendricks. I really do.
Very well said.
Now I'm going Cruz over Garbrandt. I think it can be a close fight or done instantly, depending on how you look at it. I just think that to kind of mirror the Dillashaw Lineker, I think this time, Cruz is going to be able to outlast him and outpoint him. If they fight again a year later, too, I might go with Garbrandt. But right now I'm going with Cruz. Unless anything's changed, I'm pretty sure you're going Garbrandt, Jay?
Yeah, I'm still thinking Garbrandt. I think same thing about the Lineker-TJ fight. I think Garbrandt's going to catch him, and that's all it's going to take. One punch, and he's going to jump on Cruz, and that'll be it. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think this is a pick'em fight. I think some people I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I could surely see it going the way you're saying it, just
Right.
outpointing Garbrandt and being the faster guy. Same thing with TJ and Lineker. I could see that happening, but I'm really hoping they get caught.
And by the way, guys, I'm rooting for Cody Garbrandt. I've already made a shirt for myself. I've made it, 2 or 3 months ago. An MMA think tank shirt of a picture of him with the American flag. So I'm a big fan of Cody Garbrandt, of course. So picking Dominic Cruz, I hope I am wrong. Moving on, Gunnar Nelson is injured and out of the headliner with Dong Hyun Kim at UFC Fight Night 99. So what they're doing now is they didn't bring a co-main up to main because the card's not that great, to be honest with you. Gegard Mousasi now is going to fight Uriah Hall in a rematch, and that is the main event. Jay, I'm going to go ahead and move on here because we're going to talk about them in the pick'em section because that's coming up fairly soon, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And then Shane Carwin is fighting for Rizin. Or Ryzen, however you say it. I say Rizin. I've heard both. And it's going to be in the Openweight Grand Prix. I'm happy to see Shane Carwin back. I believe he's 41 years old. I think he can mop up any heavyweight they have over there. And if that means he comes to Bellator or WSOF later, that's great because he's broken ties amicably with the UFC. What are your thoughts, Jay?
You say Risen, I say Ryzen. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I think it's great for him. You know, I want to see him fight again. I do. Carwin was a beast when he was fighting for the UFC. Unfortunately, with his back problems and everything else, he left the sport. So I want to see where he's at now. So I think Ryzen's kind of a good fit for him now. We'll see what happens. I'm interested.
All right. WSOF signs two-time gold medal winning judoka Kayla Harrison. That's the other person I was talking about with Mackenzie Dern. People are saying she could be the next Ronda Rousey, especially because she does share that discipline, that judoka discipline, or she's a judoka, like I should say. No fight yet, for the WSOF right now proposed, but she's going to be part of the WSOF ambassador team until then. What that means, I don't know. To me, it just means she's going to be probably like there at the fights and talking to people and giving her say, maybe commentating here and there until she gets her first fight. So WSOF has signed a pretty good, prospect coming in, I guess. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then Anthony Pettis versus Max Holloway. Love this fight. That's going to be at UFC 206. Finally, UFC 206, which was being passed over for so long. 205, amazing. 207, amazing. 206, all it had was I should say all it has. It was a great fight, but was Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson, which I would buy if there was no other fights on it but that. I would still buy that. But still, they didn't have a great card. Now they have at least a good co-main event. I'm excited for that. I'm going Holloway. I'm feeling good about it, Jay, and I don't want you to get me off this high.
No, I'm going Holloway too, and I'm feeling 150% good about it. I think that he's going to beat dominantly as well. He's going to beat Anthony Pettis.
Yeah, Pettis looked great in his last fight. There's no doubt about it. But Holloway, man, that run he's on, and he feels so confident, looks so confident. I mean, the fact that he told Jose Aldo to stop talking and complaining and fight, he wants that belt. He wants it bad. He's tired of all these guys, John here and John there, and complaining about stuff. That's a guy I want to see fight. That's a guy I think is going to beat Anthony Pettis, but I don't know how easy it's going to be.
As you said earlier, he's got that swagger, and I really like watching guys like him fight. Holloway's been a guy we've been on to for quite some time now. We've been watching him and really watching him grow in the sport, and we've seen Pettis fall. And I think this time he's going to fall a little bit further due to Holloway's skill, and it's going to be a great fight, though. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
I agree. Bellator, they just signed Relic Gracie. He's a 3-0 in UFC. Excuse me, not the UFC, just in MMA in general. He's the founder of Metamorphosis Grappling Show. He's going to debut on the Ortiz Sonnen card in January. He's fought in Dream and in K1, but his last bout was 2010 when he beat MMA legend Kazushi Sakuraba. Sakuraba now is way past his prime. I mean, think Vanderlei Silva 10 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you. So that's not crazy. It's not a huge feather in his cap, but it's a name.
Didn't Jason Mayhem Miller beat an old Sakuraba many, many years ago?
That sounds familiar, but it may not have been Sakuraba. It might have been another Japanese fighter in Pride.
I think it was him. I may be wrong, but I think he was old back then, in terms of the fight game.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so I think Rollick has a good chance on that. Also staying in Bellator for the next two, but we're almost done here, guys. We'll get to pick some fights, especially 205 coming up, which I'm sure you guys are waiting to hear about. And I'm waiting to hear what Jay says, because we haven't talked too much about these fights. Marcos Galval versus LC Davis at Bellator 166. That's going to be on December 2nd. Galval, he just lost his title to Dantes, and Davis just lost to Joe Warren. So, both these guys are coming off losses. I'm glad to see LC Davis back, kind of a solid guy that was in the WEC and has stuck with Bellator since the WEC has been dissolved. I kind of think that Davis might get the decision here over Galval, because Galval, he looked horrible in his last fight. And I realized Dantes took it to him, and part of that might have been Dantes, but I'm going to lean towards Davis here and getting a decision.
Really? I'm going to go Galval.
Yeah.
I think he'll get it done here. LC Davis hasn't really impressed me much. Galval's look great, so I'm going Galval.
Okay. Keeping in Bellator, Pat Curran is injured and out of the Bellator 167 main event with John Teixeira, which I was really bummed about, because that card's really not that great. And by the way, the 166 and 167, the Galval Davis, that fight, and the one we're just talking about now, 167, those are actually a doubleheader on the 2nd and the 3rd of December. First doubleheader that Bellator's ever put out, so that's going to be pretty interesting. But let me just get back to there. So with Pat Curran gone, we now have Patricky Pitbull versus Derek Campos 2 as the main event. That just is a co-main that's been pushed up to the main event. They did also just add Darian Caldwell versus Joe Taimanglo rematch. That's going to be at 167 as well. I'm excited to see that, Jay, because if you remember, Caldwell was beating Taimanglo the whole fight until I think the beginning of the 3rd round, where he shot in and Taimanglo got the quick guillotine and beat Caldwell. And Taimanglo came in overweight as well. Yeah. So I'm waiting to see if that was a fluke. If that was, I think it was a fluke, to be honest with you. But now we'll see for sure.
Yeah, we definitely will. And by the way, I just looked it up, and Jason Mayhem Miller did beat Sakuraba, beat him by submission back in 2010.
Oh, wow.
So it was that long ago. And I think he was old then in the fight game. So I don't know how old he is, but he's been fighting for a very long time, Sakuraba.
Yeah. So. When I said think Vanderlei Silva and add 10 more years, exactly, for sure, because he was big in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then by 2010 he's just a broken man. The reason he's a legend, though, is that and I'm not saying that you're calling his legendary status out or anything like that.
No,
he fought everybody. Just to people who may not have watched Pride out there, he fought everybody at every weight class.
He was a submission ace.
Yeah, he fought all comers. Do you want to pick on Taimanglo Caldwell?
Yeah, Caldwell.
Yeah.
Caldwell's just looked really dominant, man. So, that guy, he has that it factor. I know he lost his last fight, but I think that was a fluke, like you said. But I think he'll win.
Patricky Pitbull, Derek Campos, 2. I'll watch the fight. It's fine. They're both heavy-handed guys. So if I'm going to pick somebody, I'm just going to go with Patricky Pitbull, simply because he wants to get back in track after getting destroyed by a punch by Michael Chandler in his last fight. So let's just move on to something that really stinks, is really horrible. I think it affects Jay a little more than me, but it does affect me as well. Luke Rockhold injured his knee, and the rematch with Jacare at UFC Fight Night 101 is off. Still no fight set up for Jacare. I'm really bummed about this, because really Luke Rockhold, if he got this win, should have fought for the title again, in my opinion. And I really want to see the rematch with Jacare. Jay, how you feeling?
Yeah, I really wanted to see Rockhold fight Bisping again, because Bisping, I think he fought a guy that came into that octagon with such a underestimation, of Bisping's game and his hands. He was too cocky that night. And I would have just loved to see Rockhold come in with a smarter game plan and really fight, because I think he would beat Bisping if they were to fight again. But that said, I still want to see Jacare fight somebody to get a title shot, because I think he deserves one. I really do. The guy's a great fighter. But who do you put against him now?
I don't think you put anybody against him. I think he gets the next title shot.
Just let him wait. Just let him wait. Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, he technically lost to Yoel Romero, but
he didn't lose.
That guy cheated. He cheated in more ways than one.
He cheated with Kennedy. He cheated with Jacare. I mean, how many times does that guy have to cheat before people just stop talking about him? Romero to me is cheater. He's a cheater.
Yeah, and even though he cheated, I still thought Jacare won, even with the cheating. And so that was a decision that I thought was just one of the most horrible decisions I've seen.
I agree.
So that's it for the news, Jay. We got some fights to talk about. Unless you found out something.
No, let's go.
You know what? I did find something before he came on.
Okay.
And that is NFL veteran Greg Hardy is training at American Top Team.
Wow.
So he's going to be training with Mike Thomas Brown and those guys. I have a couple quotes here. This is by Mike Brown. He seems to have the drive and desire. He's talking to TMZ. He took boxing last night, jiu-jitsu today. He was training with Steve Mako, our wrestling coach, who was in the Olympics. According to Brown, who trained – I'm just reading this real quick. According to Brown, who trained the late Kimbo Slice at ATT, Hardy has been living in the dorms at the Coconut Creek, Florida-based camp. Brown confirmed that the plan remains for Hardy to make a debut sometime next year, either in low-level pro fight or as an amateur. I'm sorry, man. I really forgot to tell you about that one.
That's fine.
So I don't have much to discuss on it anyway, though, unless you do.
I don't.
Well, let's see what happens now. He's in a camp.
Yeah, that's all you can really say. Let's see if he actually learns a thing or two, because at this point in the game, people coming into the sport later in life, I don't know that they're going to do all that well, just because they're being passed up by these young guys. And I just don't see it happening for them. But look, good luck to them. But we saw what happened with the wrestler, what's his name? CM Punk. CM Punk. We saw him come in and just look like trash. So, and he had 2 years to prepare. 2 years wasn't even enough. So that just goes to show you. It's not a sport you could just jump into and expect to do well.
Yeah, I agree. And this is probably more of a paycheck for him too, since he can't make millions, not catching a football. He was a defensive guy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into some picks, Mike.
We pick 'em.
We got Bellator 164 we can talk about. Koreshkov versus Douglas Lima, man. Man, I'm going Koreshkov all day.
Yeah, it's a tough pick for me, man. I think that Douglas Lima is more well-rounded, but man,
those hands.
Yeah, the hands, the length. I know he was fighting a guy in Benson Henderson that's more of a lightweight, but I'm going to go with you and just go with Koreshkov until somebody can beat him, I think, right now. The difference here, though, is that Lima said he was hurt coming into their first fight, so I'm not sure how much that had anything to do with it, if that's an excuse or if that really did have something to do with it. But Koreshkov, he did beat him at Bellator 140 to become the champ, so let's see what happens this time. But Lima did just beat Paul Daly, so that's a good feather in his cap. So I'm just since we got so much to talk about, man, I'm cool with Koreshkov as well.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on, because we are running out of time here. We're pushing the time limit here, Michael. All right, Mike. So we'll get into some picks 2 weeks from now on the 19th. We're going to discuss the fights. Bellator 165. Let's get into that first. We'll come back to next week's 205 card last, because I want to talk a little bit about that in depth.
For sure.
So Bellator 165, we have Michael Chandler versus our boy Henderson.
Yeah, Chandler looks like a world beater, and Henderson hasn't lately. So I'm going to go with Chandler unanimous decision. I think it's going to go all 5 rounds. Henderson's hard to finish. I even thought that it was too fast of a stoppage against Dos Anjos. he gets, like Eddie Alvarez, he can get his bell rung and come back. I want Henderson to win. I love the guy. It's just, we'll see, man. I like Chandler as well. I think he's a fantastic fighter, a fantastic dude. But I got to go with Chandler.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go the same route, going against the WEC alum. I'm going to have to go I think it's going to go the distance, and I think Chandler's going to pull it out, unfortunately. But I'm with you. I hope Henderson proves us wrong. So.
Yeah, and I don't think Chandler's going to wait like Henderson likes to wait. I think Chandler's going to just push the pace and, get Henderson.
That would be smart.
On his backbeat.
And that would be smart for him. That's what you do against Henderson. All right, so next up we have Michael Page versus Fernando Gonzalez. I'm going Michael Page, Mike, just based on what I've seen from Michael Page, and not too familiar with Gonzalez.
Yeah, so for Gonzalez, the note I wrote down was he's a 25, because I wasn't either, to be honest. He's 25-13, with 9 KO, TKOs, and 7 submissions, but he's 5-0 in Bellator. So he deserves, I guess, to fight Page. This is the third time they've tried to fight, but someone's gotten hurt, I guess, or something's happened. My question for this really is, because I'm in agreement with you, does Page destroy him the way he destroyed Cyborg Santos? And I don't know if he does, but I'm going to go with Page round 2 KO.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as bad as Santos, but I think it's going to be. You've got a good pick there in round 2. I'll also echo that. I think he'll either TKO him or get a dominant win there in the second.
And I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's not my fault. It's Bellator's fault. Give him a title shot or a better class of opponent.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
You know what's funny, Jay, is all 3 of these fight cards we're going to talk about, they're all on the 19th. They're all on Saturday, so they're all going to vie for your time. Bellator and the next 2 UFCs here. UFC Fight 99 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. That's going to be on Fight Pass. And we talked about Uriah Hall versus Gegard Mousasi too. We just touched on it, I should say. I'm going to go ahead and just make my pick here and just say it's going to be Mousasi TKO in round 2 or KO. The first fight, Mousasi had his way in round 1, but in the opening of round 2, Hall dropped him with a beautiful spin kick followed by a knee and pounded him out. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Yep.
It's haunted Mousasi to this day, man. He always talks about it whenever anything comes up with the division. He wanted that fight if he couldn't fight one of the top guys, and he's got it now. So based off of all that, man, I think I'm going to go with Mousasi this time.
Yeah, Mousasi's got something to prove, like you're getting at here. And Uriah Hall, it's up and down for this guy. So I don't see that kick happening again. Mousasi's going to be too smart for that. And I don't know, however, that I agree that it'll be over in round 2. I think it'll be at least round 3 or maybe even go the distance. So, but I'm picking Mousasi. I'm going to go ahead and give a safe bet here and say decision.
Okay. The final card, and as you can see, we're just moving on basically one or 2 fights for each card because they're really not that great. I think because, to be honest with you, the UFC has kind of blown their wad on 205 and 207. And that's also, again, on the 19th, UFC Fight Night 100 in Brazil. Now, that's not a Fight Pass card. That will be on FS1. This one actually has 2 fights to talk about. Ryan Bader versus Little Nog and Claudia Gadelha versus Courtney Casey. For me, Jay, Ryan Bader, Little Nog, wrestler versus striker. And Bader has way more in the tank. He's way more well-rounded. So I'm going to go Bader. Actually finishing this fight, ground and pound, round 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that too. Round 2 sounds good. Ground and pound. Okay,
and I don't understand this booking, but maybe it's because they wanted to give Claudia Gadelha an easier fight being in her native Brazil. But Courtney Casey's, she's 6-3. She's got all finishes, which is great. 3 KO, TKOs, 3 submissions. She's 2-2 in the UFC. To her credit, she did lose her first 2 fights in the UFC, but then won her last 2. But still, Claudia Gadelha, I still peg her as the second best fighter in the division. So I'm going to go with, as it is a 3-round fight, and Casey is very durable, I'm going Gadelha unanimous decision.
I think this can be finished by Gadelha. I don't understand this fight, I don't get it either. I think that Gedalia just way outclasses Courtney Casey. And that's not to sound mean, but I think she's just a much better fighter. She's at least a whole few steps above.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a good fight.
I agree. So, well, those are all again on the 19th, 2 weeks from now. Bellator 165, of course, on Spike, and then UFC Fight Night 99. That's on Fight Pass. Get your Fight Pass, $10, people. And UFC Fight Night 100. That'll be on FS1. Jay, moving to the big card. Really, the big card of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought 200. I wanted to see every single fight that was on 200, even after they changed it a little bit because of John Jones popping for PEDs or whatever. I still want to see everything on that card. This card, however, even though if I was to grade all the fights separately and then average them out, it would have a better score. I'm not too big on the first two fights. They're not really any stars. So I kind of started us off with Tim Boetsch and Rafael Natal in the prelims and kind of gone up from there. So for me, I'm going to go – it's a tough pick. Man, I've gone going back and forth. I'm going to go with Natal. I think Natal might be able to get the submission. He's more of a submission guy where Tim Boetsch is more of a knockout guy. Yeah. So I'm going to go into Natal and just go on from there.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go with Boetsch, and I'm hoping for a KO here. So,
yeah, you're making me think about changing my pick, man, because it's such a tough pick, and I thought that initially, and then I was like, well, I don't know, man. Boetsch is getting up there, but
I'm just going to go with hopefully with a KO here.
Yeah. Moving on, Jim Miller versus Thiago Alves. Both guys are winding down their careers. I mean, Alves still has the power, Jay, but Miller is still a complete package in my opinion. So I'm going to go Miller submission round 3.
Yeah, Miller's looked good lately. So, I mean, he's been decent. So I'm going to go with Miller as well. I think it's going to go the distance, though, and he's going to win the decision, obviously. So that's what I'm going with.
All right. So Rashad Evans versus Tim Kennedy.
Tim Kennedy,
yeah. For me, despite the long layoff, I think Kennedy's still going to beat Evans, even though
he's going to have that gas tank.
Yeah.
Rashad doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah, this is going to be Evans' debut at middleweight, but even so, I think even though it's his debut at middleweight and Kennedy hasn't fought in like 2 or 3 years, I'm going to go Kennedy unanimous decision. What are you picking?
I'm going to go with Kennedy in a finish. It could be
Really?
a TKO in the third.
Yeah, I've missed seeing him fight, man. I still know him. I know his records. I know all that stuff like that, but I haven't seen him enough to really
remember how he looked against Romero. I mean, he was putting it on Romero.
Oh yeah, that should have been that Stoolgate, man. That should have been stopped and over with.
I that's why I'm saying against a much smaller Rashad Evans, who has less in the gas tank. He's got more mileage on him. I think Tim Kennedy is going to clobber him.
Well, let's see, man. I hope you're right because I'm a Kennedy fan. I'm going to go with him by decision, though. You're going an early knockout?
TKO, probably third round.
Okay.
So
Michael Johnson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. I just think the wrestling's going to be too much for Johnson. I'm going to go Nurmagomedov in a unanimous decision.
Okay. Oh, I'd like to change that. My Kennedy pick. I'm going second round. TKO.
Okay.
Yeah. Nurmagomedov Johnson. I'm going Nurmagomedov by Ragdoll.
Yeah.
It's going to be a decision.
I like how I said wrestling's a bit too much for Johnson. You're like, I'm just going to go up a level.
Yeah. It's going to be a decision, though.
It'll be for me, as we go up farther, guys, we're going to get more in depth with the bigger fights, but not that this isn't a big fight. It actually is pretty big, but if Johnson can keep his, distance, maybe it'll be a better fight, but I think you and I are in agreement what's going to happen. A fight that I never thought I would see on the prelims. That's how good this card is. Frankie Edgar versus Jeremy Stevens. To me, it just comes down to Edgar's more well-rounded with the wrestling strength. So I'm going to go. Yeah. Look, guys, I'm going to change this when we get to the main card a little bit, but I'm going Edgar unanimous decision.
Yeah, me too. I'm going Edgar unanimous decision. Yep, me too. All right, Mike. Miesha Tate versus Raquel Pennington.
Yeah. I'm going Miesha Tate. I'm going quite easily. This is another one like the Gedalia fight. I wasn't quite sure about why they made it, but Pennington's 8-5 with 3 submissions and 1 KO TKO. She has won her last 3. interesting note, Tate did coach her on Tough. But despite the fact that, Pennington's getting better, I still think Tate is just better than her. And I'm going to pick her submission round 2.
I would say that she is definitely getting better, but Miesha Tate, I'll put her in a better category. I think she's better than Pennington. However, I think that Pennington is going to be a tough fight. I think it's going to be tough, Mike. She's had 3 in a row, and she's looked great, and she's getting better, and she knows Miesha Tate. She knows her inside the cage. So this is tough. Anybody can win here, man. But I will go with a safe bet, Miesha Tate by decision.
I think that if Pennington had, stronger hands, she only has the 1 KO in her 13 fights, in her 8 wins. I think it might give Tate problems because of how she was destroyed in her last fight by Nunes. Might put her back in that mind state. But because of that, I'm going to keep with Tate, and I think she's just going to come back and want to prove something. I think it's going to be bad news for Pennington.
Yeah, because you don't see Pennington finishing Tate for sure. That's not going to happen. Crazy things can happen, but I don't see that happening. Right. She just doesn't have the strength, nor does she have the submission game to submit somebody like Tate. But on the other hand, you have Tate that does have the submission game that could possibly put away Pennington, but I think it's going to go the distance. And like I said, going Tate, decision. It's the smart pick.
And it's 3 rounds, so it lends itself better to a decision than a 5-rounder for sure.
Yeah.
Cowboy Cerrone versus Kelvin Gastelum. And Jay, let me know if I'm moving too fast.
No, not at all.
I'll let you know.
That's good.
Gastelum's never been finished, so I'm looking forward to this fight a lot. I think this is the sleeper fight, to be honest with you, on the main card.
Yes, it is.
Even though they're all great. But I'm going to go Cowboy unanimous decision, but I don't think it's going to be easy. I think that Gastelum is going to look his losses, I believe, have both been split decisions. So this is going to be a great fight. It's going to be a fight that I think Cowboy is going to want to have now that he's getting closer and closer to a title shot because he's been blowing guys out of the water. But I think he's going to come across and come away with the win, unanimous decision.
Yeah, the decision is a smart pick because, like you said, Kelvin hasn't been knocked out or put away early. Well, the thing about Kelvin though is the fact that he's fought so many good guys already.
Yeah,
he lost to Magny, but he's beat Hendricks, and I know it's a Hendricks that's kind of been weird lately, but he's fought Tyron Woodley, lost against him, but it was a split decision. So, I mean, he's beat Nate Marquardt. So, Jake Ellenberger. He's beat some good guys, Rick Story. So, I'm going to go with Cowboy decision just because it's the smart pick. However, I think that Kelvin Gastelum does have the tools to take Cowboy down and possibly ground and pound or just win on points. So
let me add to that too. Is I think that Cowboy has the good game off his back to maybe get the triangle or to be able to move back to his feet. But also we've got to remember too that Gastelum has trouble making weight. So he's a bigger guy than Cowboy will be as Cowboy comes up. He's really a lightweight coming into welterweight. He's fought welterweight obviously his last 3 fights. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But still, when it comes down to structure and all that stuff like that, Gastelum is a heavy cut, whereas Cowboy's not a heavy cut. So I think Gastelum gets him down. Cowboy's going to have some stuff to worry about, but it all comes back to the unanimous decision. Cowboy, I think. Yeah,
I'm just wondering how Cowboy's going to deal with the wrestling of Kelvin Gastelum. Yeah. I know he's gotten better at wrestling defense, but he's really going to have to showcase that here in this fight for sure. I mean, Kelvin is a young, up-and-coming dude that is putting it to guys, and he's not afraid to use his wrestling background. So.
Yeah, he's a tough winner that really has a chance to become a UFC champ, a la Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, those types of guys. You talk about how is Cerrone going to deal with the wrestling, every so often, and I think he did it in his last fight, he'll shoot in and surprise you. Maybe he wants to shoot in this time and get Gastelum off his game
I'd
early
love to
and
see
use
that.
wrestling there.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. He's looked phenomenal in this division. I'd love to see Cowboy get the win here against a guy that's arguably one of the best guys in that division. He's in the top 10 for sure. The guy is solid. So I'd love to see him win against Gastelum. And, I want to see Cowboy go straight to the top in this division. I really do.
Of course, I do as well. And for me, the big thing for that is because he was so close at lightweight so many times. And to get it at welterweight, it would just be amazing.
It would be. It'd be crazy.
Yeah. Want to go ahead and move on then?
Oh, yeah. We can move on.
Yeah. So Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero. Well, the way I look at it here, Jay, is we got Weidman has the better cardio. I think he's tougher. It's not to say that Romero is not a tough guy, but I think Weidman has the better cardio. I think their wrestling cancels out a bit. I think that Weidman has a better camp. He has better coaches, and I think Weidman's going to get the decision.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I could even see Weidman finishing this fight. However, is Yoel Romero going to do anything fishy in the octagon this time?
Right.
I really hope nothing. If anything happens again with this guy, I think the UFC has to punish him.
Oh, I agree, and I think it's to their detriment if they don't, because he's going to have a past, and not only that, it's easy to get rid of him. The guy's 41 years old, I think, or 43 or 4. He's an older guy, even though he looks like a complete specimen. I mean, and he's got a bronze medal. Oh man, I wish I could remember. He's got a bronze medal in judo or wrestling or something. I forget what it is. Maybe you guys out there are yelling at me over the podcast what it is. But anyway, so he's got credentials, but I think he's an easy guy to let go if he's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. But like I said, because of his age, because of the whole issue with or non-issue, hopefully, with steroid use, hopefully that's not an issue anymore with him. I think that he can have some serious problems with Chris Weidman. So who knows? But again, going to go with the safe bet like you and say decision for Chris.
Yeah, I think if Romero can't land anything on his feet, it's gonna be a hard night for him. That's pretty much what I think.
Yeah,
so
I agree. So
it looks like I'm gonna cheat here and look. It was freestyle wrestling. That's what he got silver in 2000 Olympic Games for Cuba. That's what Mr. Yoel Romero.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. Well, the guy's
41.
He's 39
yeah.
years old. So.
Oh, he's 39. I thought you said he was 41, but.
Well, I thought it was 41, 42, but close enough to be honest with you, in my opinion. But
in the fight game, 39 is pretty old.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're like Randy Couture, I guess, or Dan Henderson. But those are rare guys. A fight that I wish I was more excited about, Jag. I'm still happy to watch, which is Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I think that the undefeated Karolina has a more variety of striking to make it a good fight, but I don't know. I can't get Jędrzejczyk. She's just too strong. Got cardio for days. What she did to Gedalia in the last fight was just amazing. So I'm going to go Jędrzejczyk KO TKO in round 3.
Yeah, I'm excited for this fight because you got two Polish girls here fighting that are both great people outside of the cage, great fighters inside of the cage. But I have to echo your thoughts on the skill level here. Joanna is a better fighter. I think she's going to win this. However, I think that Kowalkiewicz is a very durable girl. I think she's going to last. I think it might go all 5 rounds, and Joanna is just going to put it to her for 5 rounds. That's what I think is going to happen. I think she's going to get the win, but I think Kowalkiewicz is going to, or however you pronounce her name, she's going to walk away feeling good about this fight. It's not going to be a terrible performance by her. I think she's going to look good.
Yeah, the reason I say too that I wish I was more excited, because I'm excited for the fight. I guess more excited is I just don't see Karolina. We'll just use her first name because it's easier. I don't see that hunger is not the right word, but when you see Jędrzejczyk, you see the killer in the cage. I just think if we had 2 killers in the cage, so to speak, I'd be way more excited. So I'm excited for the fight, but I just wish it was a little better.
See, that's where I'm in disagreement with you, because Carolina, I've seen that killer instinct in her. she looks like she brings it. Okay, I like watching her fight. She's a
Well,
good.
I'm talking about like in the face. I'm not talking about like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you, but I think that
Okay.
Carolina is one who brings it, and unfortunately for her, I think Joanna is just going to bring it a bit more. It's hard to go against Joanna. It's hard with anybody.
It's like I said, until she gets beat, I'm picking her every time. So I'm going third round. You're going decision in J-Check?
Going decision, yeah.
Okay. Man, not that that wasn't already the meat of the card, but now we're getting to some serious business here, simply because of all the John going back and forth. Everything else has been fairly respectable, except for Weidman has called out Romero quite a bit, simply because of being popped for PEDs, which I think is warranted. But now we're going to serious trash talk here. Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson for the welterweight title of the world. Man, it'll take Thompson a while, Jay, to figure Woodley out, but I think he will. I think he's going to get the TKO in round 5. And, it sounds like, I kind of maybe switched the guys in my brain, but I didn't. I think it's going to be, Thompson's going to be a little bit like the Rory McDonald fight, where it's going to be slightly boring for the beginning, and then he's going to finally pick up the pace, and then finally knock out Woodley in round 5. What's your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think Woodley's going to be able to figure out Thompson. I think Thompson is just too unorthodox, and his skill set is so all over the place, and it's good, it's great, it's fantastic to watch. But I think that Tyron's not going to be able to figure him out, and I think that this fight could be over in 2-3 rounds.
All right, so as I was saying earlier to the audience that we're going to talk more the higher we go up this card. There's 2 things I want to bring up. One is, do you think that Woodley, has a chance to land that one punch like, that Garbrandt has against Cruz? And also he's been training now with Sage Northcutt, who also is a karate fighter. How does that change your mind at all?
No, I think that on the first point regarding the one punch, yes, he has that shot. Anybody has that shot. If you've got a lot of power in your hands, he showcased it in his last fight, taking the belt. He knocked out Robbie Lawler. That can happen, but I don't think it's going to happen here. He's fighting a different opponent in Thompson. He's so different than Robbie Lawler. Thompson's not going to stand there and bang with him, face to face like that and brawl. Right. It's not going to happen. And as far as Sage Northcutt, totally different fighter. Sage Northcutt, to me, doesn't look anything like Thompson in the octagon. So I don't see how that relates much, but I understand why you brought it up, him having a karate background. But I think Tyron's barking up the wrong tree by practicing with Sage Northcutt. He's nothing like Thompson, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree that the closest he is, he's probably the closest there is to Thompson, but the only thing they really share in common is that they switch karate stances. That's it.
Yeah.
But that's what Woodley's talking about, and the reason I went Thompson in by KO in round 5 is I just don't think Woodley's going to land that one punch, and I think it's going to just over time Thompson's going to catch up with him, and finish him in round 5.
Yeah,
so,
and there's that reach advantage too by Thompson that's pretty significant. Yeah. So I think all that combined, you got to go Thompson here. And if you go decision, hey, that's still a smart pick, but I think this is going to be finished. Like you say it's going to be finished in the 5th. I think it's going to be earlier, but I'm going to go with round 3 TKO Thompson.
I think, and I'll just say the only way I think that Tyron Woodley wins this fight is by decision, by getting 3 rounds out of 5 takedowns and doing work on top. That's about it.
Yeah, and before we move on, another thing with Tyron is the fact that we've seen him, his cardio go way down after the 2nd, 3rd round. So Is he going to be able to hold up against a guy like Thompson who's going to keep him moving?
Right.
He's going to keep trying to shoot in there. He's going to keep trying to throw those punches and keep missing, my opinion anyway. And it's going to be pretty tough on his cardio.
It's not just that. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll piggyback off saying that, that Thompson doesn't get tired. You've got Woodley who gets tired, and Thompson doesn't. I mean, so there we got that. McGregor Alvarez. Is this Is this an easy pick for you, Jay? Is this
No.
one you set up? You couldn't sleep on. You changed every day. I want to ask you first. I'll ask you first. What do you think?
Okay. I like both guys. I like them. They're about equal for me, I think. I might even like Conor a little bit better just because what he brings to the sport.
Right.
But I think Eddie's going to take this fight, Mike. I think Eddie's going to win based on his performance against RDA and his confidence, his swagger, but moreover, his skill set, Mike. All the tools he has, the wrestling, the striking. I don't think Conor's going to be able to get with that. I don't think he will.
I think for me, it's more the wrestling, but I agree with the striking as well. It's something that to me, Alvarez is a great striker. It's going to be a different type of striking than Conor McGregor's for sure, but he's going to have the not the strength, but basically he's going to have the assurance that, okay, if my strikes aren't landing, I can take this guy down.
Yeah.
Because Conor McGregor, he has some decent, takedown defense for sure against Nate Diaz, but that's Nate Diaz. So I think that for me, I think Alvarez is going to get dropped once maybe in this fight, but that's kind of what happens in every fight. He gets right back up. But I think that well-rounded attack is going to give him victory. And I'm picking Alvarez KO, TKO, ground and pound in round 2. I think Alvarez is in trouble. It'll be quick and early, but he'll get past it, and then he'll finish him in round 2. And I think that Conor McGregor may even look tired in this fight. No, I won't say he'll look tired, but he may look worried. I know that Alvarez, some people saying it's a fluke because he didn't really beat Pettis that well, and they shouldn't have stopped the fight against RDA. He was standing on his feet, but RDA was done. And I just got to go Alvarez. I'm solid on this pick. But look, man, McGregor still is a beast. He's the best striker in the division, in my opinion, when it comes to straight striking. But this is not just straight striking. This is everything.
That is why I think that Alvarez is going to go in that very first round and shoot on Conor. I think he's going to take Conor down in the first round and pound him out first round. I think it's done. I think he's going to make Conor look bad.
Think so? Huh? You're that early.
First round. I think he's going to rush Conor. He's going to drop him, and he's going to TKO him. First round.
Well, I'm not good on first rounds, man. But so I'm going to stick with round 2.
And the reason
I can certainly see it happening, though.
Yeah, and the reason why I said this is a hard decision wasn't because of my decision on who to pick who would win this fight. My decision being hard was the fact that I had to pick against a guy that I really like. And I just think that Alvarez just has the tools, man. Any smart MMA mind, anybody watching the sport that knows anything about the sport, knows that a guy that has a wrestling background that's as solid as Alvarez's is against a guy who's not very good with wrestlers, you automatically got to pick the wrestler. You have to.
And who again is fighting outside of his weight class for a third time.
Think about this. Look what Mendez did to Conor. Mendez made him look bad, and Conor got that shot off when he got up. I don't think Alvarez is going to let him get up. That's why I said Alvarez is a smart guy. Alvarez is going to take him down, and I don't think he's going to let him up, and that's it. Game over.
And that was Mendez. I'm glad you brought that up because that reminded me of something I was going to say too, is that was Mendez off of, a week or 10 days short notice fight. He had no cardio that fight. He had nothing. He basically got off the couch for that fight. And so this is going to be an Alvarez who's coming off not just winning the championship, but he's gone through so much to get to the UFC, finally get the belt, and now he's going to lose it to a guy that talks. I shouldn't say talks more than fights because the guy fights a lot and he's a fantastic fighter. But to lose it to a braggadocious guy like this, in Conor McGregor, where for Alvarez he's such a respectful guy. I don't think I just don't see him playing into any of that. I think I think we're going to just keep going in circles, but I agree, man.
Head
round
games,
2, ground and pound.
Yeah, head games ain't going to work on Alvarez. It's not going to work on him. He's not about that. And you can tell in the interviews and stuff and all the press that they've done, Alvarez isn't wooed by this whole Conor McGregor mystique. He doesn't give a crap about all that. And it shows. And the guy, look what he did to RDA. That's all I got to say. I mean, he went in there, he got the job done, very first round. Yes, it was quick, but it was RDA. If he could do that to RDA, he's going to do that to Conor. Because when Conor was going to fight RDA, that was a fight that I could see RDA beating Conor, you know, and
right. I agree.
This is just, to me, it's an easy pick. It's an easy pick. Alvarez is going to win, and I don't see why some people are shocked at saying that, you know, at us saying that he's going to win easily.
Yeah, it bothers me too. And you know, you talked about in them, the media and stuff like that. Just the first stare down they had at the UFC 205 press conference with the big announcement. I mean, McGregor was mugging him, and you know, Alvarez was just like, you know, the kind of the smiley face, like, yeah, you know, go get your little boy belt, you know, go get your little boy belt, you know, It's the big boys are here or something like that. So he's not worried about it at all. I can't wait for this fight. I realize that.
It's not to say that Conor is a bad fighter either. I don't want to.
Not at all.
He's going to look silly with Alvarez because of the style of fight. You know, you got a wrestler in there, a damn good wrestler that uses it. He's going to make him look bad based on that. If this was striker versus striker, if Eddie didn't have the wrestling, I'd go Conor. But this is not a boxing match here. He's going to make Conor look silly because he's going to take him down. If he doesn't take him down, though, Mike, shame on Alvarez.
Yeah.
If he loses this fight, shame on him. You know, but hey, if Conor does beat him standing, let's say first round he knocks out Alvarez, then what? Well, where that is going to be an amazing accomplishment for Conor. I'll give him that, but man, I can't see Alvarez losing this fight.
Nobody's done that in the UFC ever, held two belts at the same time.
But I cannot see Alvarez losing this fight. That's why I don't want to really delve into that too much, because I don't see him losing. I don't see Alvarez losing.
Well, let's leave it at that then, man, because I certainly agree with you. We're just different, I think, on the rounds. I'm on 2 and you're on 1, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's just, I guess, get into Fighter of the Month.
Fighter of the Month.
I'll go first. There's a couple things that I looked at. I looked at Brennan Ward getting the win. Brennan Ward's win was this month. But he, you know, he had that thing where, like, there's a baby that was, like, left in a busy street in a stroller, ran out there or got the baby out of the street, which I think was, you know, obviously a pretty cool thing that I hope any of us would have done. But a lot of people didn't do it because they were just driving by the poor kid. But he ran out, got the baby. And that's awesome. I look at David Branch, and you know, he got another defense, but I got to go back to old school picks and pick on the sport itself, or not the sport. You know what goes on in the sports in the cage. And even though it was a loss, I'm gonna go Dan Henderson. His retirement fight left us feeling good, I think, at least in so much as he gave it all he could. He almost won that fight. At 44 years old, 46 years old, mid-40s regardless. And that's my Fire of the Month.
Yeah. You and I are on the same page. I also picked Dan Henderson, which doesn't happen often, but I picked him for the same reasons. You know, the guy fought valiantly. Some people argue that he won that fight. I don't think so. But damn, he fought great. And you know what? You got to give it to him for his last fight. So Dan Henderson. Both of our Fighter of the Month of October.
There you go.
All right. So I guess we'll end the show here, and we'll go ahead and say our goodbyes. Mike, if you want to go ahead and say anything before we leave, go ahead and do it now.
Yeah, I'll still be doing Facebook as always, different articles and things like that. Because this card, UFC 205, is so huge, even though there's only just one fight really to cover on Bellator the day before, I'll do my best to keep up with everything. But there are so many fights that I'd like to write about that some of them might just be a fight video with a short paragraph. The fight week spotlights I do every week. But as for the fight week preview, I may have to keep it to 5 fights instead of 7 or 8. Other than that, I'll be doing that and doing everything as normal. When new stuff happens, I'll write about it, and we'll be tweeting about everything as well. Jay, do you have the you gave out the number earlier?
Yeah, it's 925.
The email?
Oh, the email is mmathinktank@gmail.com, and we also have the number, of course, 925-237-1296. And, of course, the Twitter being MMA Think Tank PC. So you can get us there on Twitter. And, leave us a message at the phone number or leave us a message over at the email or leave a private message on Facebook, and we'll get back to you.
And iTunes as well. If you guys have iTunes, please give us, tell us what you think on iTunes as well. And just all the other social media. I can be a media whore if I have to, and I'll just say, hey, tell your friends about us.
Yeah, exactly. Currently, we only have 1 rating on there, but I would love to see more of those. So go ahead and do that for us if you can. It only takes a few seconds out of your day, but it would greatly help us move up on the charts there, so we can be seen by more people. That's how iTunes works, I guess. So anyway, Mike, that is it for this show. So we've got a lot of MMA to watch upcoming, and it's an exciting time. This is always a great time of year for MMA, and this year is just no different than last. It's going to be great.
For sure.
So anyway.
2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks, we'll be back.
All right, have a good night, guys.